Okay, the next consideration is, does the library have first and second violins? And the reason for that is you get phasing issues, creates all kinds of things. If it only has a first violins, and you either got to get a second violins from another library to balance it out properly, or you're going to use the same library twice. Try it, see what happens. The next issue is, does it sound synthy? One of the big, here, as soon as somebody comes out with a library, almost inevitably, one of the first comments somebody says is, oh, it sounds synthy. Well, I have news for you. They all sound synthy. I got them all. At some point in the score, somewhere, something is going to sound like a synthesizer. And you can't get away from it. That just has to do with the physics of sampling. Another thing is, do you get the phasing, or what we call the dreaded organ sound? Now, the organ sound means you're using one library, you're keying in this work, and you step back, think, wow, it's going to really sound great, and you hit the play button, and it sounds like an organ. Well, that has to do with the physics of sampling, which is another, you have to do a lot of programming to eliminate that type of a sound. And so, again, this is the reason why you want 2 or more libraries. Now, somebody wrote me a letter one time and said, so do I need 5 libraries, 1 for each string? No, you don't need 5 libraries, 1 for each string section. You just need a couple, so that you can, that should blend well, so that you can set these things up in such a way that you get a beautiful sound, and you avoid this dreaded organ sound. Then the last note is dynamics. Now, dynamics means, is it pianissimo? Is it mezzo forte? Does it have a crescendo? Does it have a decrescendo? Those are dynamic issues. And when you're doing a MIDI mockup, every library handles these differently. Vienna handles the dynamic issues differently from East-West, who handles it differently from Sonovox, who handles it differently from LA Scoring Strings. I mean, everybody has their own particular solution to it. And so you have to go back before you start jumping into this work and seeing, well, wow, how are the dynamics happened? Some companies will record a crescendo for you. And if that's the case and it matches, you can just drop in that crescendo on a sustained pitch. Other situations, you may have to go in and create the crescendo yourself. Some libraries have mezzo piano, mezzo forte, forte, and fortissimo. Now, here we got to be realistic. Sometimes they actually record these libraries of those dynamic levels. Sometimes, and I know at least one developer that does this and tells everybody he has these multiple dynamics. He only recorded at one dynamic level. And then he went and in the editing process lowered the volume, so he ended up creating these multiple dynamics, but he didn't really record 8 dynamic levels. He just recorded 1, and in the editing process he changed the volume levels and then put them together to create what sounds like you're going crossfading, where you're actually increasing the dynamic level as you play the keyboard. Now, some dynamics work by velocity, where the more intense you play the keyboard, the greater there's a dynamic change. Sometimes dynamics work by volume change. Other times dynamics are recorded the way the folks at the Vienna Symphonic Library work it. So you have all these considerations there, and if you're using multiple libraries, one of the things you have to do is you got to go through with pencil and paper, notate out, well, which technique are these guys using, so that when you get in there, you're not wasting your time figuring out these basics. All right, so let's look at some MIDI mockup considerations. For example, S8 here. We're just going to use the exact orchestration that Joseph Wagner came up with. And so the first one I marked out, you got the tempo consideration. And when you're going on with that tempo consideration, we have the bowings here. The first 2 arrows in the bar 1 are indicating the bowing considerations. Those phrase markings, that's not phrasing, that's telling the violinist he wants the violin sections to play under a single bow on those bars right there. When you get to bar 4, you see the 2 red arrows at a slant, and that's going to be a dot dot kind of an ending right there. How are you going to catch that with your library? Okay, the viola's here. There's that inner line, and it's just, going within minor thirds and major thirds, it looks like, just off the top of my head here. And so you've got to watch the start and end points there, so that at the end of that phrase, or the end of where it comes off the bow, there's a little space. Because what's going to happen is the bow is going to lift off the strings, and then it's going to be placed back down on the strings. So you've got to catch that, and you have to catch the starting pitch in your edits as well as the ending pitch, and not to mention the velocity considerations for smooth, non-jerky lines. I have noted that all the parts are piano, the far left, and so are you going to use a program that has a piano sound to it if it's recorded, or did it have just a sound and you've got to drag the volume down to create a piano sound? By piano, I'm talking about a dynamic, not the physical piano. And so that gets into mixing issues. Where's unity gain? Are you using CC7 or using CC11? When you get down to, now below each of the 4 staves there, you'll see horizontal red arrows, and there are your dynamics for having crescendos. So again, there's a lot of work. I mean, just for these 4 bars, you could be looking at 2 or 3 hours of work there. So doing an effective quality MIDI mock-up really takes time. And just let me tell you, it's faster to print out the parts and put them on the stands and have players play them. But that's not how budgets are going. Budgets aren't going that way. Budgets are going the way of you have to do all that work. So that means to do an effective, professional-sounding MIDI mock-up means that you've got to be spending a reasonable amount of time listening and going to live concerts. That's where you really learn, is by going to the live concerts. And then going back and practicing.